Arcanae, or How to Break a Curse the Wrong Way. Prologue. I'm sure you know why you're here. I have a pretty good idea, yes. She leaned forward on the table, pressing her fingers together. Her clear green eyes were piercing. Then there's no reason to waste time with formalities. Renee and Elena Silvers, you have been called before us today because of our decision. A response to the most recent of many incidents you have caused. Renee glanced to the side. You know it's not my fault. We're well aware that you can't help it, dear. A different elder, a woman with mahogany hair and kinder eyes, shifted in her chair. And we don't blame you for it. Speak for yourself. One of the men huffed and crossed his arms. Ahem. The first elder cleared her throat. Renee and Valencia, we of the council have been patient throughout your ordeal, but we can no longer sit idly by while you continue to be a danger to the rest of the village. The accident you caused at the Devios Festival is proof enough that you cannot be allowed to remain here. So, you're exiling me. Renee looked up. The council's table was positioned in front of an intricate tapestry detailing the village's founding. As a child, she often studied it, intrigued by the stories. But today, it offered no comfort. The elder nodded with a sigh. Yes, we are. Again, we know it's nothing you can control. We know how much sorrow you must feel each time it happens. The kinder elder offered a weak smile. At the other end of the table, the man from before stood, pounding his fist on the wood. The fact of the matter is that you are a disgrace to the Mistralian elves. Curse be damned, you have brought nothing but chaos since Enough. The head elder shot him a glare. She frowned. While it's true that she has had struggles performing up to the standards we elves hold ourselves to, we must handle this situation with dignity and grace. She turned her head to gaze at Renee. Do you have any questions, Renee and Valencia? No. Renee shook her head once. Then, without any further deliberation, it is hereby decided that Renee and Valencia Silvers is exiled from Imvelian until the day she can either control or break the curse afflicted on her. The elder gripped a wooden gavel and slammed it against the table once. You have until tomorrow to gather your things and say any final farewells. After that, you will be considered an outsider and intruder, and the guards will not be kind. Renee bowed at the waist as she stepped back before turning. Just as she left the meeting hall, her sister fell in step with her. I'm going to assume you heard everything. Of course I did. Ashwin snorted. Don't tell me you're surprised. Surprised? No. But I'm not happy. Neither are our parents, but we all knew this day was coming. Ashwin sighed. Eventually, anyway. She waved her hand. Once you break the curse, you can come back home. Renee clenched her jaw. You know that's not possible. Every curse can be broken. You just need to find the right way. Not this one. They were silent as they continued to walk through their village. Hardly anyone paid them any mind, and in fact a few children ran right between them in a game. Ashwin stopped, gazing after them. Will you miss it? Miss what? This village? Home? Renee looked up through the green leaves of the massive trees making up their forest glen. I will. I think I'm still trying to quite understand what my life is going to become. You're going to see a lot of the world now. Ashwin smirked. I almost envy you. Renee turned to face her sister. Do you? Almost. Ashwin continued walking. You know you'll have to change your name if you decide to walk among humans or orcs or any other people. They do seem to have such a hard time properly addressing us. She jabbed her elbow into Renee's side. Much like someone else I know. Ash. Renee grunted and rubbed her ribs. Perhaps someday you'll learn to refer to me correctly. Ashwin laughed. Her shoulders shook and some of her blonde hair came free from the clip holding it back, falling over her forehead. Though I doubt it. Maybe if your name wasn't so damn long. Oh, come now, you even have 2 middle names to pick from. You only need to use one. First and at least one second name, you know this. Renee huffed. I fall asleep in the middle of it all. They stopped before a particularly large tree that they both called home during their childhoods. Inside, the elder Silverstills waited to hear the council's decision. Renee sighed. I'm not looking forward to this. Neither are they. Ashwin placed her hand on her sister's shoulder and gave it a gentle squeeze. They'll be fine. Remember that. Besides, you can still write to us. Find a way to contact us somehow. You'll have to keep me abreast of your adventures, after all. I will. Somehow. Ashwin let her arm fall to her side. Have you thought of a name? I think... Renee. Renee glanced up. That should be easy enough for a human to remember, right? Renee. Ashwin crinkled her nose. How juvenile. Chapter 1. Australian elves, though reclusive people, are known for their loyalty to their villages and cities. Should you ever be fortunate enough to have one of these forest folk indebted to you, then you may, depending on the debt, have a servant for life. A traveler's guide to the people and places of Nakaro. Of course, the curse struck just as she had her foot on the last branch. She felt the familiar shiver down her spine before the branch broke, sending her tumbling to the forest floor. Renee landed with a thud, and the air left her lungs in a rush. God damn it! She coughed, pushing herself up. Nothing broken, but she'd have a bruise on her hip come tomorrow. Fortunately, her bow hadn't broken in the fall either. It remained tied to her hip on the other side. She got to her feet and brushed herself off. Damned thing. She grumbled to herself as she straightened her clothing and continued on her way. As always, Renee kept moving. She tried not to stay in one place for too long, lest she overstay her welcome. And she decided she was better off without too many people around her anyway. Safer for them. Safer for her. She thought back to the traveler she met not long ago, the one who told her about this new land. Oriann? She'd said, drinking her mead. I don't think I've ever heard of it. Doesn't surprise me, Pointy. Probably don't leave your woods much. She ignored his rather racist remark. So where can I find it? Find it? You're right next to it. Just keep going through the thickest parts of the Birel forest and you'll come across it. Don't expect much out of it. Place is crawling with the scholars out of that giant conservatory of theirs. The Athenaeum. It had been many, many years, indeed, since she even thought about the scholars. Long ago, when she was first cursed, her father brought some scholars to their village in attempts to cure her, but alas, they were supposed to be experts on magic, and yet she was still cursed. Renee drew herself out of her thoughts as she nearly stepped on a snake. Surprisingly, the curse didn't allow her to be bitten. She didn't think on that long. Her delicately pointed ears pricked to hear fighting in the distance. A shout, a sharp strike of metal on metal. She narrowed her eyes. If someone needed help, she would be remiss to allow them to be without it. She took off in a run. It didn't take long for her to break out past the edge of the forest into an open field by a city's gate. She felt a tingle down her spine and ducked into a roll. Behind her, she heard a crossbow bolt hit the tree she just stood in front of, and turned to see it quivering in the bark. That was the only good thing about the curse, she supposed. At least it told her when she was about to have a very bad time. She straightened to her feet and crossed her arms. Well, that wasn't very polite, now was it? She arched an eyebrow. Two bandits stood before her, one holding a crossbow. They glanced at each other. The crossbow boy shrugged and reached for another bolt. We ain't known for being polite. She drew her own bow and readied an arrow. You'll be known for being dead if you don't leave. Her arm pulled back on the bowstring and she heard it hum from the tension. Yeah, right. She released the arrow and it slammed into one man's hand, forcing him to drop the bolt. He screamed something incomprehensible. His partner looked up to see another arrow aimed at him. I hate it when they fight back, he growled, taking a step toward her. Me too. She let it fly and he fell to the ground from the arrow through his throat. Renee shouldered the bow as she rushed toward the guards at the gate. She wasn't entirely sure what she stumbled upon, to be honest, but she did know she could at least help. As she ran, she reached for her daggers and made a desperate leap onto an orc's back. She stabbed both blades in as far as she could. The orc flung her off before collapsing. She grabbed her daggers back, looking up to see a frantic guard. She nodded. You're welcome. Thanks, miss. She turned, both daggers raised. There were still easily half a dozen bandits crowding around them. Though the guards outnumbered the bandits, even Renee could see they were poorly trained and panicked. She launched herself at the nearest man. The clash of weapons and half-formed battle cries rose around her, but she focused only on her target. Her palms grew slick. There was another tingle down her back, and she dropped one of the daggers. God damn it! Her opponent took the opportunity to strike. She gasped as she felt his curved blade slice up her arm, nearly the entire length from her elbow to her shoulder. His was a short-lived victory. She scrambled close and gutted him. Blood dripped down her wound, and she looked down to see her tunic sleeve was ripped. This was my best shirt, asshole. She shoved him away. Renee bent to pick up her other dagger in time to have another bandit barrel into her from the side. She fell back against the earth, wheezing. Can't a lady have a moment to breathe? As she tried to get up, the bandits slammed their boot against her chest, pinning her down. I suppose not, she coughed. Those daggers of yours look nice. The bandit used their sword to flick some of Renee's hair away. Yeah, elvish weapons fetch a good price. Too bad you won't get to find out. Renee gripped their ankle and tried to toss them off, but her wounded arm screamed in protest and she gritted her teeth. The bandit chuckled. Nice ears. Those will fetch a good price, too. Some sick bastards out there, you know. Renee didn't get a chance to respond before someone else shoved their sword up to the hilt through the bandit. They looked down before the sword was withdrawn, and they fell sideways with a gurgle. Renee sat up. Much obliged. It was the guard from earlier. He smiled and reached down a hand. My pleasure. She let him help her up and dusted off her clothes. The rest of the bandits were either dead or too incapacitated to continue fighting. Well, we made quick work of them, But the guard merely shook his head. Should get that looked at. This? Renee looked down at her arm. The scuffles smeared her blood around to make the wound appear bigger, and though it stung, she knew it wasn't severe. I'll be all right. A few people wearing bright white robes began dashing around to the guards. Renee realized someone sent for the town's physician. She turned to make sure her own wound wasn't visible. So, what is this place? She asked, looking at the guard. Invergary. He raised his hand. Over here. I can tend to it myself. There are others who need care more than I do. Still, she put a hand over the wound as it was beginning to throb. A woman began walking toward them. Unlike the obvious physician and his team, she wore a dark jacket under a stained apron. The pockets were full, and Renee noticed a few herbs poking out the top of one. The local herbalist, then. Are you all right? She asked, glancing between Renee and the guard. Her hazel blue eyes were wide. I'm fine, but our mysterious savior here is hurt. The guard gestured to Renee. Please, I'm hardly a savior, and I'm hardly hurt. She scowled at him. The woman instead moved to see Renee's wound, reaching out a hand to grip her elbow. It's not bad, but it does need to be cleaned. Renee gazed down at her. The woman's touch was gentle, though her fingers were cold. Her short, chestnut hair was pulled back to a small ponytail at the base of her neck, and some still fell around her ears and across her forehead. Renee blinked. I suppose so. I can tend to it. Follow me. The woman grinned, her lips curling back in a warm smile. Oh, but she was cute. Renee could only nod as she let the woman tug her along. Thank you. I don't mean to take up your time with this. It's no trouble, she sighed. There have been so many bandit attacks recently. So this is common? Renee glanced around as they passed through the town's main gate. Unfortunately, things are delicate. She led Renee through to the main square. My workshop is just over there. Renee noticed stalls and storefronts of all kinds cluttered the square, selling things not even she knew. Good spot for a shop. It is, though I mostly buy things. I don't really sell any of my potions. The woman stopped in front of a nondescript building covered in vines and built with brick. She pulled a key from her pocket and opened the door. So you are an herbalist. Renee followed her inside. Alchemist, actually, but I do work with herbs, so both, I suppose. The interior was decorated much how Renee expected. Dried and drying herbs hung from the rafters, and bookshelves lined most of the walls. The wood floor creaked under her feet. She realized there was a sizable basement beneath her. She continued following the strange woman. But you know medicine. I know a lot of things. The woman looked back with an apologetic smile. My laboratory is down this way. She walked down a few steps leading to another doorway, which she shouldered open. The resulting staircase led into the basement, and Renee's eyes widened. All manner of ingredients and potions were stacked on shelves, on wood tables, even a few on a chair. One table was littered with books and parchment. "You're quite busy down here." "I spend a lot of time on research." The woman cleaned off a spot on the table. "Go on, sit down." Renee did so. She looked over to see a complicated mess of flasks and test tubes. "I see." "I'll need you to remove your shirt.